What's going on? What's going on? Chef Joseph, the entrepreneur, back at you again with another video. Chef Joseph, the entrepreneur, back at you again with another video. Today is June 12th, 2026, and it's another day that we have, to get it together as entrepreneurs and entrepreneurettes. Today's title of the subject is going to be Never Expect People to Understand Your Struggle. Never expect people to understand your struggle. Okay, so that's a pretty interesting. That's something that is pretty interesting, and we're going to discuss it today. Because sometimes, we want people to understand where we've been, where we come, what we've come through, and sometimes we're expecting them to sympathize or empathize with us, and sadly, some of us are let down because we think that people would understand our struggle, but yeah, a lot of people just don't understand our struggle and what we've been through to get to where we are. And so, yeah, they can make comments, they can throw little, just different shade, just different things they could say that can cause a trigger, because people they just didn't understand what you went through to get to what you had to build, and that is something that I don't think that you should take personal, because it's your life. It's your struggle. It's your business. It's what you had to do to go through, or what you had to go through to get to your level. And but never expect people to understand your struggle and what you've been through to get there. I know for real, once y'all read the book, you'll see, I went through a lot of stuff dealing with other people that really pushed a lot to the limit, to the point I was like, you know what? I ain't even got to do this. I got different stuff set up. I don't have to worry about do. I ain't got to worry about no attitudes. I ain't got to worry about nobody calling out, calling in, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, you go through that, people don't understand that can make you a certain way. You know what I'm saying? Because you've heard all the excuses, you've heard all of the comments and the slyness and the just whatever that comes with that package, as being a business owner. And yet people will not tend to understand why you decide to check out, or check out, so they just don't understand. I can tell you that I can understand to the level that I'm at, that I can see why certain artists, let's just say musicians or actors or actresses, they just get out of the limelight for years. They just check out, and they check out because, it's like they've seen a lot. They've been through a lot. They've been playing these roles and just different things like that. And then they're like, I just need to check out. And then we're like, we don't understand. Like, well, why did they just, fall out the limelight? Yeah, a lot of times because, yeah, they just been through a lot. And people they're not going to understand, like that level of what it took to go through what they had to go through to get that particular part in a movie. Just using that for an example, and yeah. So with that being said, people are not going to understand what you went through. They're not going to understand your past. They're not going to understand, your drive. They're not going to understand why you made the decisions that you had to make, for your own mental clarity. You know what I'm saying? For your own mental stability, for your own mental health, and that's very important. I've always said that if anything threatens your mental health or your mental stability, you need to cut it off. I don't care who or what it is. People are not going to understand. Sure, they're not. They can look at it from their lens, but they're not the one having to carry the weight like you have to carry it. They don't understand the burdens and the things that you have on your shoulders for you having to carry their weight, or another person's weight. And that's for real. And so don't expect them to understand it. You may can say, tell people, let's just say you tell your closest friend, or you can just tell a stranger, or tell someone just trying to get into business or whatever, what you went through. They can sit there all day and nod their head, yes, 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 or, whatever, and agree with you. But you went through your story. You went through that. You know what it took. I'll give you one example. When I was homeless at one time, I know what it's like to have to be on time if you're going to eat at a certain time. I think it was a place where they open up the doors at 2 o'clock. I've seen them turn many away that's not there by, I think it's from 2 o'clock to 2:30 or whatever that time was many years ago. It's like, yeah, I've seen them turn people away because people just weren't on time. So what happened with me personally is that I'm an extreme stickler for my time. I don't let people waste my time. If you're going to be late, then you call. It's okay. But this just tipping through the door 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes late. Yeah, we're in a season now that people lose $1 million deals because they're not on time. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that have those type of excuses, and they want to blame every other, external circumstance. But instead of looking in the mirror and saying, "What did you do?" What I'm saying, to cause yourself to be late. And I do see that people, not all people obviously, but a lot of people make excuses, and they don't want to be held accountable. What I'm saying? I remember one time somebody that came for a job, and I talked to the person like the day before. It might have been a day or so before, and the first thing I told him, do not be late. So for example, you talked to them at 10 o'clock yesterday. Now they have a whole 24 hours to be here, or 10 to 12 hours, whatever, to be here at 10 o'clock the following day. That means if you're serious about it, you find where the job is at, you make your way, make your means, and set up your modes of transportation so you can get there. And then you tell the owner of the company, hey, I will be there. You agree to be there at a certain time. First thing the owner tells them, do not come late. I already got a problem with it. Just know if you come late, you will be turned away. Oh, I got it, chef. I know I'm going to be coming the door for a job interview. 15 minutes late. Well, I couldn't find it. Whose fault is that? And many of you are going to lose many opportunities because why? You don't know how to be on time. You know what I'm saying? And the way I feel now, good for you. Because if you'll learn one day, and a lot of people such as myself don't play with you wasting their time. If you agree to be somewhere at a certain time, then you need to be there at that certain time. That's it. That's all. But I just wanted to share that with you, as far as your timing, and don't expect people to understand your struggle. They're not going to understand what you went through. They're not going to understand the sleepless nights. They're not going to understand, the magnitude of what you experienced. And I can tell you when I made the decision I made, there was a couple things in my life that I made some decisions on as an entrepreneur that I was not going to deal with. And I'm so glad that I did. It just came a place in my life. I was like, you know what, I'm done with this foolishness. I'm done with this chapter. I wrote about it. If y'all want to know what happened, read the book. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, that's what happened. In a good way. It's positive. It wasn't anything negative. I just know for me and the creativity and things that I have to give to the world, it required me to kind of disconnect. What I'm saying? To disconnect. And so I can make that room for what the Most High is, downloading into me for me to do on the planet. But don't ever expect people to understand your story, you know, because yeah, it's your story. But many people will agree with you or they can concur with you, but they really don't understand the magnitude of the things that you went through to shape you into the way that you are today. I see, for one example, let's take marriages and relationships. I've seen men who were doing well in marriages, that I've met and encountered through the years of on this entrepreneur journey. And they were married, had houses, cars, and everything. But one day somebody decides to leave, or she decides to leave. And I know the situation can go vice versa, but she decided to leave. And basically, of course, he bought the house. He was in the military. What I'm saying? They bought the house, paid for, cars paid for, everything. They get married, have children. They move into the house, whatever. Boom. Now he's the one that has to leave his house that he paid for 30 years. And now she takes the house and the car, and all that. And then here this man he's homeless. I've seen it with my own eyes, not once, but more than once. And that is a very sad thing. You talking about somebody's self-esteem being ripped. You talking about a person who's spent their life trying to build something for self, and then they get into this situation, and then it goes left, and straight up, I'm never getting married again. Is what they would say. I'm never getting married again. I don't care what the world says. I understand, but unfortunately, these laws are set up that way for the woman to take a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? And I have my opinion about a lot of that. Which is not going to be the typical opinion as um, most people have been programmed and led into a certain belief that this is the way you're supposed to do certain things. And reality is, you don't need a piece of paper for no one to tell you you love someone at all. I mean, who are you? You love somebody, you love them, and you be together. You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. You know what I'm saying? God is not going to strike you down, or not let you enter into the kingdom, if you don't have a piece of paper. What? Marriage is covenant. Marriage is when you two people agree that this is what they're going to do, and it's beyond a piece of paper. That piece of paper is another thing attached to that thing that can spin a whole nother way if it's not handled correctly. But however, as you go through this life and as you go through building something, and when you get to the top of your game, just know a lot of people are not going to understand that struggle. They're not going to understand what you went through. I remember there were times that, of course, as an entrepreneur, you buy equipment, you buy things for business, things like that. And then you look at people come through the door that just mishandling the things, that you paid for. How many of y'all can agree with that? Or have experienced that, excuse me. Where you worked hard with your money to buy something, and then someone comes into your door, whether it's a business, whether it's your home, and they just want to plop down on the couch, like, and just put their feet up on the coffee table. And you're like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I paid $300 for this coffee table, and who told you to put your feet on top of my coffee table? You know what I'm saying? And it's like those type of things, if you get what I'm saying. And they don't understand what you went through, how much overtime that you had to work to make sure that you got the coffee table that you wanted. And now they just disrespect it by just come plopping in your living room and putting their feet up on your coffee table. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, that's totally not cool. But yeah, so but I want to share that with you all. As for today's video, do not expect people to understand your struggle. Do not expect people to understand it. So that means, in other words, the flip side to that is you have to be strong enough to override that. So let's talk about that solution. So even though they won't understand your struggle, that doesn't mean for you to give up. That doesn't mean for you just to throw in the towel. That just means for you to just saddle up and keep moving to the next level. You know what I'm saying? That's what it ultimately means. So, but anyway, Chef Joseph Entrepreneur, back at you again with another video. Like to subscribe to the channel. Do not expect people to understand your struggle, and do not expect them to understand your journey neither. I know my journey was like, yeah, speaking from my journey, yeah, it was pretty, yeah, went through a lot. That's why I wrote about it in the book. He came during the Civil War, and it talks about all that. So, but at the end of the day, don't expect them to understand your struggle. So anyway, I'm out of here. Just want to, kind of drop that video on you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As entrepreneurs, I do offer consultations and things like that. You can go to chefjosephskicksauce.com. You can see, the consultation page. Just shoot me an email. We'll go from there. If you need help setting up a business or anything like that, or any type of just consultations when it comes to setting up whatever you're trying to do, that is the game that I'm in, the business that I'm in as well. So, but thank you for your time. Do not expect people to understand your struggle. Peace.